Okay, hi everyone. So welcome to the prototyping section of our course. What we're going to do is we're actually going to start with what we finished up with the Vanitas animation, just as an arbitrary starting point. The other reason I want to do it this way is I want to encourage you to think of creative software as not something that has one way of using it, but as lots of different skills that you can combine together in unexpected ways. So my design of this project, it's not the typical way that you would, for example, produce a laser cut sculpture, or maybe even produce a projection map sculpture. But I've tried to build in a series of interesting techniques that hopefully you can then take, transform, and come up with your own ideas for creative projects down the line. You can see from my video here that I've shown in class, it's basically the composition from the Vanitas exercise, and then I've made some procedural animation, as well as a little interactive control system where when you press a button, it transforms into like a colorful animation. And I also showed in class that this has sound. So I think now if I turn up my sound, I must have, no, I've got my thing muted. Okay, don't worry about the sound. You can see it in class. Okay, so let's walk through this step by step. We're going to start with something really easy. There are lots of different ways to make laser cut boxes. For those of you who've taken any courses in Rhino and Grasshopper, you'll see that there's pre-made Grasshopper networks where you can laser cut a box. In Blender, we could make a 3D model of this and export vectors, but because the basic component of our project is a box, I'm also just going to use this website here, MakerCase.com. I'm going to select a simple box. I'm going to set it to millimeters. I'll put my first measurement as 225 millimeters, my second measurement as 30 millimeters, my third measurement as 400 millimeters, and then I'm going to say that's the outside. Material thickness 3 millimeters, that's good. That's the same thickness as our wood. I'm going to say it's open, so we're just going to be using the front of this, and we're going to hang that on the wall, and then I'm going to set the edge joints to finger. So that's all we need. Then I'm just going to download the box plans. The finger size there, that's the biggest we can do, 14.63. We'll remember that number for later. It's just going to help us with some scaling. Okay, so I'll go download box plans. That's all fine. I'm going to download an SVG. Okay, that's done. I'm going to copy that, and I'll go back to my project folder, and in my SVG, I've done this a few times, so I'm going to do this. This is not great naming. It should be numbered, but okay. Box, and oops, I accidentally double clicked that. I'm just going to name this box, and I'll call it box 3 current. Also not great naming, but look, we're all human. Okay, so now if I press spacebar, we've got this, what's called a SVG scalable vector graphics file. All right, the next thing we're going to do is I want you to download Inkscape. I'll put these links in the description. Inkscape, it's just an open source vector graphics software. If you want to use Adobe Illustrator, that's also fine. I just, I like using free software wherever we can. It just keeps things nice and simple. Okay, so download for whichever operating system you use. And what we're going to make in Inkscape is going to be something like this. It's going to have the layout for all of our objects from our Vanitas animation, and as well as our box. So I'll just drag that over to the side, and I'm going to make a new, we'll just start again, make a new document, and I'll drag that over here. I'll just close this old one, close without saving, close without saving. Okay, so here's our new document, and I'm just going to go into document properties, and I'll set that to A1 and landscape. That's fine. Now I'm going to import the box we just made. So import, and I'll go into my SVG folder, box 3 current, open, I get a little dialog box like this. I'll just click OK to everything, and there it is. And I'll just move it down into the corner. Well, I can move it, anywhere we want for now. It's just fine. Okay, so that's our box. We're going to do one other little trick, which is I'm going to take one of these sections, and we're going to make that, if you remember from my video, I put this little shelf here, and we're just going to completely invent that shelf from the existing box plans. So I'm just going to grab that, and I want my shelf to be 15 centimeters wide. So this width we can get, if we click on it, it tells us our width and our height. This width is 40.1 millimeters. I guess that might be the kerf or something like that. So I'm going to make a square that is width 40.1, 400 millimeters, 0.1, and the height is going to be 150 millimeters. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to have that exactly in line. Can I snap it to a line? Is that going to work? Let's see. I just dragged a little guide across. You're going to snap to that guide. I just want to have them exactly in line. I'm going to set their line thickness to the same. So see how those lines are really thin, they're really thick? We can change that. I'll just select this top shape here. I'm going to click on this bit that says stroke down here. I'm going to set it to black, and I'll click on this number down here, and I'll put that to like 0.3, and may as well put this one also to 0.3. Oh, how could that be 0.3? That's a lot thicker. Now I'm confused. Is that 0.03? Okay, there must be some other setting that I'm missing here. Don't judge me. I just want to have them visually kind of the same. I'm just going to put that here. And I'm going to do a little trick where I'm just going to have them, I'm going to hold down, oh, that's not what I wanted. I'm just going to have it overlapping just the tiniest bit. Like it should everything should still fit okay. I just want to overlap it a little bit. This is why I wanted the lines the same thickness. I'm just going to put that at an 0.1 there, because I just want to check that we're overlapping, because yeah, it looks like we're not yet. So I want to go like, I want to move it up so our lines are overlapping, and then I want to move this across so we're both on that line. I'm sure there's a snapping tool here somewhere. But I'm just going to do it like this, 0.1, and the arrow's going that way, so I'm going to make it minus. I'm going to put a 0 there. Oop. Go apply. Yeah, that's going to move me just across. And I'm going to check that here we're a little bit over, so I'm going to remove that minus here and just hit apply, apply, apply. Whoop, too far. Put a minus there. Apply. Ah! Why did I click that twice? Okay, you get my point. So now that we're overlapped, we're going to do a trick. Basically, I want these, instead of being like finger joints, I want them to be holes, and I want our other box, which I guess now is like impossible to see because I made the lines so thin, but it looked the same at the time. Anyway, I want this box and this box to be one thing, and I want these to be holes instead of slots. So I'm going to select the bottom box and then shift select the top box. Let's just check that that selection worked. I'm going to make this a bit thicker now because hold up. Oh, okay, that was selecting the whole thing. I just want to really make sure I'm selecting the right thing here. Sorry, I'm faffing around a little bit. But okay, I want to select that. It's so thin I can't select it. I'm going to just make that stroke a bit thicker because something's making that very unselectable. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm moving it. Just give me 1 second. I want to go to its stroke and make that 0.1, just so I can see it. Okay, that's better. Okay, now let's just, all for the sake of a simple trick. Okay, so I'm going to select the bottom one, shift select the top one, and just say path the union. Okay, beautiful, worked. And I think it only worked because they're slightly overlapping, because it's doing what's called a Boolean operation, where it's looking where two shapes overlap, and it's just giving us the overlapping shape and deleting anything in between. So that's perfect. Now we have like the bottom of that box, but we've got this tray that's going to come out below, which will give us that. So that's what we want. Okay, so I'm just going to move this down here. I may as well make all of these black. I'll just set my stroke to black. I can just actually drag select these, set all the strokes to black, which did not work. Looks like I have to do it individually. Stroke, black, stroke, black, good. And look, what did I set this one to? 0.3. I'll just set these to 0.3 as well, just so we can see what we're doing. It's just a visual display here, and I find that 0.1 really hard to see. Okay. Okay, great. Oh, and then there's one more here. All right. Stroke, click the color, change it, click the stroke width, change it to 0.3. Okay, nice. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to bring in our Blender objects, but we also need to have our Blender objects be the right scale. So this base shape is 40 centimeters long, which is what our size is going to be in the real world. So we need to make sure that that is working in Blender. And what we also need to add are these little tabs so that our objects can slot into the holes. Okay, so that's what we've got to work on. Let's pop over into Blender. I'll just make this full size. So first thing we need to do is we're going to add a new camera. So far we've been using a perspective camera, but we're going to add a camera that's called an orthographic camera. I'll just tell you what that means. So this is like the Wikipedia page for 3D projection. If you've taken my drawing classes, you've seen this page before. We've been using perspective cameras in the past. I think they're probably just like a 3-point perspective camera, which means that things that are larger to the camera, closer to the camera, are larger. Things that are further from the camera are smaller away. An orthographic camera in Blender uses parallel projection, which means that parallel lines on objects stay parallel and things don't get smaller as they move away. There's some technical differences here that will be slightly different and not exactly what we'll have in Blender, but it's kind of what you use when you want to make animations like this sort of, isometric style animations. Okay, so let's make an orthographic camera. I'm just going to go Shift A and add a camera. And I think I need to turn my extras back on so I can see that camera. Okay, so where's that camera? Here it is. Okay, so first of all, let's just turn off its location and rotation, and I'm going to RX90 so that it's facing our Vanitas, and I'm going to GY, bring it back. Then I'm going to, in the camera settings down here, change from perspective to orthographic. So if I make a new window here, and here I'm just going to go View, Cameras, Set Active Object to Camera, so we're looking through the camera. If I move the camera, forwards and backwards, we're not changing the size of our animation at all because we don't have perspective. So if we want to zoom in, we actually change the orthographic scale to something like that. And I'm just going to get it so that we are kind of framing our objects. I'll just grab it on the x-axis, get it in the middle, grab it on the z, and maybe I'll just zoom us in a little bit more. Okay. This is going to be useful later on anyway. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to render that image because it's going to be useful for us. So I'll just make sure I'm on PNG. I need to be on film, have transparent ticked, and I want to hide my box in the background. I'm just pressing the dot key to find it here, but you can find it in your collections. Turn off the box in both the render and the viewport, and the same with the table, because I just want to see the objects. Okay, so that's pretty good. Let's just render that image. Render image. Okay, that's done. So I'm going to save that image, and you can see I've done this once before. Vanitas test, or Vanitas Ortho. I'm going to make this Vanitas Ortho 1, and I want to save it RGBA with alpha. If you remember that from our class discussion, alpha means that third channel of information which tells us about transparency, because I just want the image with no background. RGBA, save as image. But we also need to change the actual size of our Blender objects because we need them to fit onto that 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters platform we're making. I'm going to use the table for scale here, and you can see the table. Actually, I'm going to make a new object just because the table actually has a bevel on it. I don't want that extra geometry. So I'm just going to find my table here, hide it, and I'm going to make a new cube, and I'm going to make it 40 centimeters in every direction. So that's the size that that's the table that our objects need to fit onto. And I'm even going to move my camera, GX, and change my scale. Oh, actually, I can do that. Change my scale, GX, move that camera again, GX and GZ, just so we'll have everything GX in the right location. Okay, I'm just going to hide all of my cameras and lights. Don't need them for the time being. And I'm going to hide the box. Don't need that either. Okay, I'm going to look straight down the front here, and I'm going to also hide this camera just from my viewport, just so I can select my objects, because I need to scale them all. I'll go into wireframe, drag select all of them, S for scale. And I'm just going to kind of freely scale them until they sit nicely on this box. That looks fine to me. And yeah, I just want them all sitting on the box. All right. Okay, so now we're on our way. The next thing we need to do is make the little tabs. Yeah, and then maybe I'll just grab my camera and I might just improve our scale a little bit. Yep, that's fine. And then GZ, whoopsie daisy. GZ, move it down. That's looking pretty good. Okay, I'll just go back into solid mode. All right, so let's add these little tabs. I'm just going to GY this, move it back a bit. Okay, now, these tabs we're going to make. I'm going to just use this cube, I'll just duplicate it, and the tabs are going to be, how big should the tabs be? The tabs are going to be 15, let me think. We can make them the same size as this. Is that going to tell me a size? No, it's just telling me the size of the whole thing. I think from the website, it said our tabs should be 14.63. So we're going to make our tabs 14.63. Let's just no, we're going to make our holes 14.63, and so our tabs will be just a tiny bit smaller so we make sure they fit. So let's make them like 14.5. So let's just pop into Blender, and I'm going to make this 14.5, so that'll be 0.0145. Looks really tiny, and then scale it on the height axis a bit, bring it up, and then we can make it, I'm going to bring them right forward so we can see what we're doing. They can be in front because we have no scaling in orthographic, so it doesn't matter where we put it, we just want to see it. The other thing we want to do is make sure that we don't want it to be too long, so it needs to be at least the thickness of our wood. Our wood is 3 millimeters. So I'm going to just turn on my snapping and snap to edge, and I'm just going to bring this up. No, sorry, bring it up. There we go. So now we're on that edge. And then I'm just going to GZ minus 0.01. So I've just gone down. That should be a centimeter. A paranoid part of me just wants to check. I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm going to make it 0.01, make it 1 centimeter high. And just gonna do a little check on our render. Snap it up, and then, yeah, okay, good, that worked. So we're exactly one centimeter below the surface. That should be fine. And that also means I'm going to bring my camera down just a little bit. I'm just going to GZ the camera so that we don't lose our tabs, so that our tab will be in the frame. Okay, so let's keep going. What we're going to do, I'll go into a forwards orthographic view here. I'm just going to use Shift D and duplicate this tab, but first I'll just call it tab so we know what it is, and I'll move it into a new collection called tabs. There we go. And I'm just going to put them in kind of logical places where the skull is like touching the table. I'm going to duplicate it, GX, duplicate GX. And we just kind of have to do what fits under our objects. Duplicate, go 2 for the books. Now here's it's a little tricky here. Our blocks are actually like a little bit less wide than the actual tab. I'm just going to change its Z rotation. And well, I guess we can have it the other way around. We can have, as long as they're not exactly the same so it doesn't go through, it'll just be a little bit weird, that's all. Let me think. Just let me look at it. Yeah, okay, so in this case, I'm actually going to grab the top, move it down, and I just want to make sure, I'll just turn on my snapping. Oop. I'm just going to turn on my snapping, and that's actually going to have to actually be, sorry, just pressed some weird buttons here. It's actually going to have to be the correct height here, so just, I'm just going to snap it to the table. So for our blocks, it's a little different. We can't just lazily overlap it. Turn off my snapping. We're going to have them kind of in line. But that's okay, we can work that out. Okay, also with the books here, I want this one to be, I'm just going to go into, grab my top face. I don't want that to stick out the top of my book. As long as I'm not changing the height down here, changing these heights up the top is totally fine, because we're not going to use the top part up here. So I can just put these really anywhere. If you're wondering how I'm bringing that down, I've just got the top face selected. I just selected that in wireframe mode, and then I'm just bringing it up and down. Okay, so I've got one for the coral, the vase, book, block. It'd be nice to have 2 on this vase. I wonder if it's going to fit. Okay, so I'm just going to grab that top. GZ, bring it down. Yeah, so this one I'll really have to bring it in a bit. GX. Ooh, these are going to be quite close together. Should be fine. As long as it's not poking out the side, that's all good. Might even bring it out a little bit. Okay, so now what we're going to do is a little trick. I like tricks. If I go into my renders, we're actually just going to render out something like this. There's lots of ways we can get vector images out of Blender, but this way it actually gives us a slightly cleaner result for the type of vector render we're trying to do, because we're not trying to get any of the geometry of these objects. We just need a silhouette. And whilst we can use the freestyle plugin to render that, I actually find I get a cleaner result if I just render out this image and then do a bitmap trace in Inkscape, which I'll show you how to do. So let's do that. So in order to get that nice clean render, we need to put a flat shader on everything. And I'm just going to do a quick flat shader. So we spoke about doing this a little bit when we were talking about rendering. Basically, I'm just going to go to my skull. I think it still has a decimate modifier. Here, I'm just going to apply that because I haven't been using that extra geometry, haven't been missing it, and I don't need it slowing down my scene. as you can see that it is. So just let that modifier apply, and that's because it was that downloaded asset that had lots of geometry. I'll just make a shader editor here, and I'm going to turn that off and create a new material and call it mask. And mask is going to be bright green, and you can see it's changing here. I'm going to grab that hex code, copy it, going to go into the emission, put the same color there, and turn the emission to 1. So now it's pretty flat. And then I'm just going to go into my render settings and turn off ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflections, and also I had freestyle vector on from when I was doing some of that AI stuff. Also, I want my transparent background on. If I go to my render view, I want to make sure that I've got that nice alpha channel. Okay, so we've got that, that green mask on the skull. Unfortunately, we can't do this all in one go, because you'll see that some of the objects overlap, like the books, and the coral and the vase. So we're going to instead, what are we going to do? We're going to do this in 2 goes. So that first coral at the back, I'm actually just going to hide it completely. I'm not going to use that in this exercise. Then I'm going to hide this coral, whoops, here. I'm going to hide the books. I can actually do some of this just by collection, turn off the books, and I think we're good. Yeah, that's fine for now. So let's do that. What else do I need to do? I need to hide some of these tabs, the ones that we're not using for this render, like the ones that belong to the books, and the ones that belong to the coral, which is here and here. Okay, so now if I just go into here, I've got tabs for the skull, for the vase, for the blocks, and for the flowers. Just wondering if the flowers, yeah, hopefully that'll be okay with just one. Guess we'll find out when we put it all together. The joy of experimenting. All right. So now let's just put that green shader on everything else. So I don't know if you remember this from class. It's a great trick. If you select the skull and then shift select everything else that you want that green shader to be on. So I'm going to get all my tabs. Now the flowers are a little tricky. I'm going to go into wireframe mode, look down the front, and I'm going to go shift, select that. It's going to get my camera, so I'm just going to click on that till it's deselected. And now, because I lost my selection order, I'm just going to hold down shift and click the skull again. So now the skull is orange. That's important. That means that it's the active object. It's a lighter orange. All the darker orange ones, or the red, are the passive objects. So we're going to copy the material from the active to all the passive by pressing Command L on a Mac. I believe it's a Control L on a PC, and clicking Link Materials. So now I've got this lovely sort of bright green render. And then we're just going to hide this cube, which I never named. I'm going to call it 40 cm reference laser cut, just so we know what it is. Okay. Oh, the ball. I forgot to give the ball a color. Now the ball is green too. Okay, so let's just render that. Render image. Oops, looks like I've still got something in my compositor. It's gone black. Just turn off that. That's also from the AI class. Which tab was I? Animation. Let's try that again. Render image. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. Ooh, almost. I don't like those gaps there between the blocks. That could be annoying later. So I'm just going to move the blocks down. Just because Inkscape is going to... it's probably going to detect a vector there. So I just want to move those down a bit so there's no overlap. All right, so render image, that's better. Okay, so now let's go image, save as, make sure it's RGBA. So we get that alpha channel. I'm going to call this Vanitas Mask 3, because you can see I've done this a few times. Save as image. And now we're just going to turn off the objects we don't want. So turn off the physics objects. Now in historical, I think we want that coral back, and we want the skull to go. I want this vase. I think I'll just turn off that whole collection. and then I'll turn off my flowers. Whoops. Okay. I just unhid way too many things. I want to turn off my flowers, turn off my vase, turn off, I just clicked so many things that I didn't mean to click. All right, turn off that skull. That we don't need. Sorry, I've just turned on a whole bunch of extra stuff that nobody asked for. Environment box. Okay, now we're looking a bit better. That last piece of coral. And I want to turn the books back on. Here we are. Turn on the books. Now, same thing with those blocks. I do want to make sure the books are not overlapping, and I've got to turn off some of these tabs. That one, and I think some of the tabs we hid. See, if I'd have labeled these, would that make life easier? Yep, okay. So, nope, that's totally wrong. Why didn't I label anything? Okay, which tabs do we want here? Is this our coral? Coral, yes. Coral, okay. That was probably a block, was it? That's a block, that's a block. Okay, they're the ones we want. And just make sure we hide things in the render as well. Okay, now we're just gonna have to put these also on the mask here, and then just shift select the other things we wanna have that material. Command L, link materials. It has done nothing. Oh, this needs to be the active object. My mistake. Link materials, right? Now, see this gap between the books. We want to close that gap. So, select these, GZ. So, GZ, close it up. GZ, close it up. Okay, that should be fine. Rightio, let's render that image. Render image. Okay, that looks pretty good. I can't see any gaps. Hopefully Inkscape likes that. We're going to just save that as Vanatask Mask 4. Save as image. Now, one thing I forgot to do at the beginning, I'm going to cut this back into the beginning of the tutorial, is I meant to save just an initial orthographic render. That's going to be useful just when we're placing our objects, but I'll edit that back in. Okay. All right, so now let's hop over to Inkscape. So in Inkscape, we have our boxes. I'm just going to move those off to the side. And I'm going to bring in the first one of our images. File, import. And we're going to go to 3D Fundamentals, Test Renders, and we had Vanitas 3 and 4. So open this one. And our scaling, it might have scaled things a little bit. So we might just have to come back to this and make sure that we're the right size, because at the moment, we can see that, the block it's not the right size. But that should be a pretty easy fix. Okay, so we're going to go path, trace bitmap, and what we need to do is basically create. Looks like we still have a bit too much lighting. It's not as flat as I would have liked. What did I forget to do in our render? It's probably still going to work fine, but I'm just curious. But the field was turned off. Our lighting is all turned off. Oh, roughness. I could have turned the roughness up a little bit. Yeah, okay. It should still work fine. I'm just going to change our threshold a little bit because we don't want any of that extra noise in there. We just want a fully black mask. Okay, let's just click apply and see what we get. Okay, so at the moment everything's gone black. I'm just going to drag off the black one, delete the color. But so this is now a vector. So you'll see it in a second. If I go to stroke, and I just want to click like that it's a flat color, I'll set that to black. And then I'm just going to set the fill here, or the fill here, to no fill. So there we go. That's our vector render. So that's looking good. So, okay, it wasn't a perfect flat render. I might correct you in class just to turn the roughness down so it should be flatter. But let's just import the other one. Vanitas mask form. Yeah, okay. Looks like I forgot to save that with an alpha channel. And we've got a black background. Should still work. It's got a lot of contrast, so it should still be fine. Let's give it a go. Path, trace bitmap. Only problem is that it's setting our fill to black, so we can't see it. See, I'm just going to redo that because that's just annoying. Okay, let me just go back here, view my render, and all I forgot to do when I saved it, I just forgot to click RGBA. Easy mistake. Save it again. Pop back into Inkscape. Okay, now import. Mask 4, there we go, white background. Now, it's still got that tool selected. Let's just, whoops, sorry. I'm just gonna undo that setting. I was moving the wrong toggle. Meant to move the threshold. Okay, so we don't want to be here where we'll be getting too much information. We just want to be here where we've got a nice clean mask. We don't need to go too far because, it might remove some detail, but that looks fine to me. I'll hit apply, drag off our vector, delete our render, and then once again, I'm going to set the stroke to black and the fill to nothing. So there we go. That's our vector render. So we're getting there. We're getting pretty close. The next thing we need to do is we just want to make sure that our tabs are the right size. So if you remember in Blender, these tabs, we made them 14.5 millimeters. So I'm just going to make a little reference shape and make it 14.5 millimeters. And I'm just going to use that. I can make that a little bit shorter. I'm going to use that just to sort of calibrate the scale of these. I believe if I hold Shift Command, I can scale it proportionally. If you don't hold Shift Command, you're going to warp things. You can also scale in the transformation here. You can tick proportionally, and you can just make a percent. Like I could turn this to like 80% and hit apply, and it'll make it smaller. But I just want to make sure that we are the size we want to be. Oh, and that was one hell of a guess. Okay, okay. So now we're the right size here. Let's put that off to the side, and oops. I just want to drag this down, and I just want to show you if one of them is correct, they should all be correct because we're scaling proportionally. So that's fine. This is not like super duper precise, but we're laser cutting with wood, so I think we should be fine. Let's just click on this, and I can do 80%, drag it over, try that again, 80% of 80%, and we're pretty close. So let's just make this like, I don't know, 90. That should be. Ooh. Really? Hold on. I just want to check. That should have been doing 90 for both. Oh, maybe I ticked that the wrong way. Hold on. That might be a mistake on my part. If I make that 95. Hold on. 95. Sorry, I just want to make 100% sure. Okay, yeah, scale proportionally should make them the same. Yes. I just want to make sure we're not scaling part of it on, and one axis without scaling the other. But yes, okay, we're scaling correctly. Just trying to get this the correct proportion as well as the correct size. Okay, now I've got a little bit small, so I can just make this like 101 and hit apply. Tiny bit small. Let's hit apply again. Okay, that looks good to me. We might, if this doesn't work, we can always like change the process a little bit in the classroom. If our joints are too loose, we can go for a slightly more precise workflow, but I think this should work okay. Okay, so we're really close. The only thing that's missing is we need the holes to put, these objects here. And I made this render at the beginning, which I'm going to remind you to do early on. This is just a render of our Vanitas with no background. And I'm just going to use it as a reference for the proportion of our objects. So I'm just going to import that image. Should be somewhere here. Here. Import it. I'm just going to get it the right size to our objects. This is just kind of, we don't have to do this. We could really put these anywhere and projection map our objects anywhere. But I like this idea of transferring from Blender to our lasercut thing precisely, because you never know when that precision could have a really useful consequence in your animation. We can send out these shapes individually in Touch Designer and move them so this wouldn't really matter, but who knows, you might want to do something that this precision has an unexpected benefit. So I'm just going to try to keep it in the workflow just in case it's useful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place our objects, and I just want to work out where to put the tabs basically. I might just make all of these green for a second. I'm going to make their stroke green, something like that, just so I know what I'm looking at. And I think if I select all of these, I want to break them apart into separate objects. There we go. Nice. So I'm just going to put my skull over the skull, my vase over the vase, my ball over the ball. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit. I'll see if I can do all the blocks at once, because they should be a little bit tricky to see, isn't it? Blocks over blocks, flowers over the flowers. And now I need to do the same thing here. Just select that path, break apart, and I'll just make them green so they look a little bit different. Oh, looks like we had some separate flower bits. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, I didn't notice that before. We'll see if we can get those back into some logical place. Oh, okay. I'll put the books over the books. And then, oh, it's when I did the break apart. Oh, now I see what I did. I separated part of the flowers that I didn't need to. Okay, and I'm just going to put the coral here. Now I'm going to delete the picture because that's done its job. Okay, and yeah, it was the gap of the flower. All right, I'm actually going to just remake. That's super annoying. Well, what if I use my image to put this back in the right place? That would be clever. Yes. Okay. Note to self. Unexpected solution. There we go. Okay, cool. All right, great. Better than guessing. Okay, great. So now the only thing that's left is working out, how far forwards or backwards to put them. And this is going to be a little bit abstract because we're using an orthographic render, which by definition has no depth. If I, bring my objects back in, when they, where are the rest of them? More historical objects. That one. Yep. When we look at them from here, they have depth and they've got a separation, but because we're rendering with an orthographic camera, they're all actually the same size. So there will be some differences in terms of how we want to treat this in terms of using perspective renders or orthographic. But I'm just gonna, maybe I'll split my screen here and I'll just cover that up, close my render, and I might even just do it by eye. Can I close this? It would seem yes. Okay, so that's what they look like in Blender. So save me having to use my brain and remember, I'm just going to move things like forwards and backwards. I'm going to move my skull up, move my vase, that's the most forward thing, down. But also it could be fun to like, if I hold shift, I can move them up and down more. It'll be fun to like exaggerate it a little bit. It should make for a more interesting thing to projection map onto. Maybe I'll put the vase there, and maybe I'll put the coral like further forwards, just so things are like spaced out. The ball I'm going to leave out for the moment because that's, I might do like a random thing at the end of the class if we have time to integrate that robotics thing. Okay, so now that my objects are here, I'm actually just going to add, ooh, I zoomed in too much. I'm going to save what I'm doing. That will be a good idea. Save as, and I'm just going to call this, I'm going to make a folder, 3D Fundamentals, SVG, and I'm going to call it laser, oh, it always goes to, it always makes me search there. I don't mean to, I want to change the name. 3D Fundamentals, SVG, and I'm going to call it laser cut layout 2, and I'm going to make sure that's just saving as an Inkscape SVG. Okay, hit save. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to use these little blocks and just reuse them as the holes. So I'm just going to press Control C, Control V, and I've got another copy of this, and I'm just going to put it over here. I'm going to hit path. Sorry, path? Yeah, break apart. And now I've got these. And I'm just going to use them. I'll double click this to scale it to my screen. And I'm just going to put these where I need them. And hopefully these should be just a tiny bit bigger. Yeah, they're just a tiny bit bigger than the ones we made in Blender. Remember these, the size of these came from the website. It was 14.63 and we made our Blender ones 14.5. So I'm just going to put them like for reference, whoops, at the bottom of our, of our, you know what I mean, sorry, late at night. At the bottom of our tabs, I'm just going to go Control C, Control V, and I'm going to put that at the bottom of our tab, or on this reference line I've put here. And you can just, it's much like Photoshop, you can just drag a ruler from the top, make a line, and I'm going to Control C, Control V, just put the tabs kind of, you know, that as long as they're in line with each other, I could move that line down if we want to be a bit more precise. I'm going to put this one here on the line, Control C, Control V, put that on the line. Someone can tell me what the snapping key is in the comments, because that'll probably be better if we snap that onto that line. And let's just continue that and put all these tabs where we need them to be. Control C, Control V. Oh, and if you haven't worked out how to zoom in, I'm just using my middle mouse button and the Control key. But like all software, you just kind of play around until you find whatever their key mapping for zooming in is. Control C, Control V. Good. How many more to go? A few. All right, let's just get this done. You don't have to watch me doing all this. Feel very welcome to skip past it. That one just has one. I'm not even going to bother with a control line. And I'm going to just use the top of this old one because it's super close. And I should be a little bit careful that I'm getting them in line with each other, because that will matter. If we put them too far this way or this way, they won't fit. So they do have to be right over the top. I should just check I've been a little bit careless. Technically this is just one, so it doesn't matter, but just to make a point. Okay. Yep, that's fine. And we need the one just for the books. Control C, Control V. And then Control V, and I'm just going to eyeball that at the bottom of our tab. Okay, cool. I think that's pretty good. So what I want to do, I'm going to grab grab this and shift click so I've got my whole flower this time. Going to move it up. Oh, no, I don't. Of course, there's more flower. That one, shift, and that one. And I'm going to move it up, and then I'm going to combine them again so that doesn't happen again. Path, combine. So now that's one object again. And I'll just move my book, my skull, my vase. Oh, careful clicking. My vase. Whoops. Undo. I just meant to drag select the. Nope. Can't drag. Okay, that's what I want. That's what I want. That's what I want. Drag select them out. Get my coral. Drag select it out. And that looks good to me. And I'll just bring the ball back in so we don't forget about it. Okay, we're getting really close. The last things that we need to do. We can also delete. We don't need these words here anymore. So I just click on that and hit delete. You can keep those in. Sometimes you can like leave that in your object if you really want to. This one was just a duplicate, so I'll delete that whole thing. I just need that to get my markers. But all right, so that's it. That's the finished layout. Hopefully I haven't forgotten anything. Now, before you go to the laser cutter, I will want to check this, and hopefully we'll have a technician with us in class. And if there's any mistakes in my tutorial, hopefully we'll catch it by the first person who tests out their work. But when we're using the laser cutter, it's often a good idea. We might move these around to just be a bit more efficient in how we use the timber. Because we can, if we just leave huge gaps like this, it's a big waste. So we'll try not to do that. So I'm just going to save this, and then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to save. Oops, not save a copy. We're going to save as, and we just have to make it a different format for the laser cutter, which is a DXF R14. AutoCAD DXF R14 for a desktop cutting plotter. And I'll just change the name of this to layout, final DXF, and I'll hit save. And I get a little pop-up here. I'll just say yes, 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 that's all fine. Do whatever you want. Hit OK. And that error, it pops up. Usually it doesn't matter. Sometimes people do have problems getting the DXF to export. I've got some notes in the class document that I'll point you to, and I think usually we can solve these problems. But from my experience, from Inkscape, the DXF R14 works pretty well. All right, so I know that was a slightly long video, but hopefully that gives you all the information you need to get the laser cutting ready to convert to this, to make this model. And then we're going to move into how to laser cut it, how to assemble it, and then how to start projection mapping. Okay, I'll see you soon.